Okay, it is 6:30 and we're about ready to open the Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 17th.
Okay. Thank you, Jean.
I'd like to note that all members of the Planning Commission are in attendance, so we do have a quorum. And our first item to address is to look at the minutes from Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. Do we have any comments or corrections or motion to approve the minutes?
Madam Chair,
Catherine?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of, we have a first and a second to approve the minutes from February 20th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our first item do we have any announcements from the county? Okay. Our first case number is item number 1, case number C15-006, the Kiowa Creek Master Drainage Plan, and the county representative will be giving us the update. Kathy Valencia.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Valencia, and I work with Public Works and Development. Tonight I'd like to give you an update of our Kiowa Creek Master Drainage Plan, which we have recently completed, and the reason why we'd like to get it adopted. Tonight's presentation is informational, and any comments that you may have we'll take to the board study session that we're going to be having in a couple of weeks.
Put it over here.
Do we have a screen here? Right your head. I know it's
Do that automatically. Okay, so the master drainage plan will be used as a guide for future development in the watershed. The three main things that we looked at for this study was number 1, delineating the 100-year floodplain, looking at existing crossing structure capacity, and looking at how to stabilize the creeks for future flows. So here's a vicinity map of the location of Kiowa Creek. It's just east of Box Elder Creek and west of Wolf Creek, out near the town of Bennett. This is just to give you an idea of the basin. Just a couple of pictures just to show you that it's rural. There's around 140 homes in the basin. So north is on your left now. The creek flows northward. So the study area that we did was just in Arapahoe County. The headwaters are in El Paso County and Elbert County, which would be to the right downstream. The creek flows into Arapahoe County and then basically joins in with the South Platte River. The total basin size is 275 square miles, and 42 square miles were studied for this plan. So we studied Kiowa Creek because it's the first creek just east of the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District boundary. So this is the county's first master drainage plan outside of their boundary, and it will be used as a guide as development occurs. This is the existing FEMA floodplain. determined using approximate methods, which basically means there wasn't a hydraulic analysis performed and therefore no base flood elevations. So the light blue shading is the basin itself, and then the red hatch is the floodplain itself. So this is a picture of what we have now after the study. And if I flip back and forth, you can see that now we have the tributaries mapped for the 100-year floodplain. The main stem is narrower than the approximate method was, and there are no homes within the 100-year floodplain. So the first thing we looked at was the hydrologic analysis, which is basically figuring out how much water flows through the creek. So the basin will stay mostly rural. 6th Avenue could see a little bit of development. But most of the flow is coming from upstream development in El Paso and Elbert counties. Then we looked at the hydraulic analysis, which is determining structure capacity and the depth of the water in the basin, or in the floodplain. So 3 bridges were studied and numerous culvert crossings, and it was determined that most of the crossings are undersized to pass the future 100-year flows. This is just a picture of the I-70 bridge, Quincy Bridge, and County Line Road Bridge. We also looked at the culvert crossings along the tributaries, mostly crossing Brick Center and Quincy Road. And again, it was determined that most of the crossings will be undersized for future flows and will require more pipes. This is just a picture of existing erosion in the basin. So the other thing that we looked at was how to stabilize the creek. Grade control structures will be necessary to handle the future flows. And this is just a plan and profile view of what a grade control structure looks like. So basically that it will guide and control the water, thus preventing erosion and degradation in the creek. And this is just another picture to show you what that might look like. So the status after completion of the master drainage plan is we now have an accurate 100-year floodplain. We know the crossing structures need to be upsized, and we know what would be required of that, and we know that grade control structures are needed for creek stabilization for future flows. We also did a cost estimate, and it was determined that required infrastructure would be a total capital cost of around $80 million. So with our planning, our study session next week with the board, we're going to be looking at whether a basin fee would make sense to alleviate some of that cost of the required infrastructure. And so our recommendation to the board will be to adopt the Kiowa Creek Master Drainage Plan to be used as a guide as development occurs in the basin. Any questions?
I guess not.
I have a question.
Mrs. Watson.
So my question is, so if the flows are increasing, coming from other counties like Douglas and Albert, how will Arapahoe County, because you wouldn't necessarily collect any basin fees from other counties, is that correct?
Right.
So how would then, if this is rural, potentially tier 3 space in our county, would you anticipate getting many basin fees to offset your cost?
Yeah, and that's one thing we're looking at because we probably won't, because there's not supposed to be a lot of development in the basin. So we're just trying to figure out what would make sense, and we'll talk about that with the board in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll open the public hearing. Is anybody here wish to speak to this Kiowa Creek Master Drainage Plan? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to item number 2, which is the Iliff Avenue Metropolitan District, case number SD 18-001, the Special District Service Plan. And Mr. Reynolds will present from the county.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is a proposal for a service plan for a new metropolitan district which would serve the Iliff Avenue townhomes and the Iliff Avenue single-family homes development. And you can see on the screen the proposed boundaries of the metro district. It's located near East Iliff Avenue and South Yosemite Streets. And a metropolitan district, and I'll call it a metro district from here on, is a unit of local government that provides public improvements and services to property owners and residents within that district. They are generally used by developments to help finance public improvements like roads, sewer, water, and parks. They can issue bonds and levy taxes just like other governments. And under Colorado law, the County Planning Commission makes a recommendation regarding the proposed Metro District Service Plan, and you'll be making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And the service plan functions sort of like a charter would for a city government, where a city government has a charter, a Metro District has a service plan that explains how it works. And this proposed Metro District would serve 189 residential units between the Iliff Avenue townhomes and the Iliff Avenue single-family homes, which is also known as the Highline Creek Estates development. And the Board of County Commissioners has approved final development plans and final plats for both of those developments. This service plan would allow up to $7.5 million of debt obligation. And if construction costs were to go above that $7.5 million, the developer would be responsible for providing the money for that. And the proposed maximum property tax mill levy is 50 mills, with an additional up to 10 mills possible for operations, maintenance, and administrative costs. One of the things that this district is proposing to do is help provide sort of parks and recreation services, so there would likely be ongoing maintenance and administration associated with that. Staff has reviewed the proposed service plan and determined that it does meet the statutory criteria for a service plan, and those criteria are all detailed in the staff report. The county also engaged a financial consultant to review the service plans, because as planners we don't necessarily have the financial expertise to determine whether this is a realistic plan to pay back the debt. And the consultant did have some initial comments, which the applicant addressed in the version that is in the packets, and our consultant does not have any objections to the plan that's included in the packet. We also have him available if the Planning Commission has sort of detailed financial questions. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, and we also have the applicant available tonight to present. I can answer questions if the Planning Commissioners have any.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. We will hear from the applicant. Thank you.
If I close this, will it? It's okay?
Close it all the way.
Okay. I'd like you to be able to see me. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joan Fritchie. I'm an attorney at Collins, Cockrell & Cole, and I'm representing the applicant for the proposed Metropolitan District, which is Albert Development, and Scott Albert is here to answer any questions that you may have that I might not be able to answer. Sorry. When I was in law school, it was recommended that I not be a trial attorney. which is fine with me. I was also told to stand on the side of the podium, but I don't know if that works with your microphones. So this district is covering the 2 new infill developments that Jason just went over, and the anticipated cost of the public improvements is roughly $5,772,000, and that includes the statutory categories of streets, which is improvements to the adjacent streets, Iliff Avenue and Yosemite, as well as the it's not the internal streets. No, it's not the internal streets. Also, park and recreation. So the project is intended to have a pool and a community center, and also some common area landscaping. The district will finance the water improvements, the water lines going in, as well as the sanitary sewer. And then the district will finance the storm drainage improvements and continue to own and maintain them under SEMSWA's regulations. So the improvements to the adjacent external streets are constructed to county standards and accepted by the county. The park and recreation improvements will stay with the district, and then the water and sanitary sewer improvements will go to Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sanitation. There is a correction in the Exhibit D to the service plan. Under sanitary sewer, it says permit ECCV. That should be CCV. The text in the service plan is correct, but we'll have to make a correction to that exhibit. See, what else do I want to say? So the district will finance the public improvements and then continue to own and operate the park and recreation and storm sewer. It's anticipated that the district will contract with the HOA for the property to operate the pool and the community center, but they are open to the public. The debt service mill levy is 50 mills, and then there can be up to an additional 10 mills to cover the cost of operating the district as well as administrative. As a division of local government, the district follows many of the same statutes that the county does for having an annual budget, a budget hearing, the requirements for an annual audit or audit exemption. The directors, once the district has residents, the board of directors is an elected board with 4-year staggered terms of residents within the district. Can I answer any questions?
This is my question. There was a comment in the report that this is essentially, and I think it was from Alpert Development, that by setting a metropolitan district, it would allow him to better manage the cost of the homes and not impart all the cost of infrastructure improvements onto the new homeowners. Can you talk a little bit about how this would be to the benefit of the future homeowners in this area?
Sure. So the improvements are designed and constructed to the standards of either the county or Cherry Creek Valley, depending on who they're being conveyed to. So by forming a metropolitan district and financing the cost of the improvements over, the standard term is usually 30 years, then each homeowner over the 30 years helps pay for the improvements over the life of the improvements. So the first homeowner, who may only live there 2 years, isn't taking the hit and paying the full cost of public improvements. This also makes the project more competitive with other developments in the metro area and the state in general, due in part because of Tabor. Most new developments do have a metro district or multiple metro districts attached to them as a way to finance the infrastructure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question regarding the contract between the Homeowners Association. It's proposed that they maintain the pool and the clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
How is the Homeowners Association going to get reimbursed for the portion that is public use? Because you're opening it to the public. So you can't expect the homeowners to bear the cost through their monthly maintenance fees for the general public. So is it contemplated that obviously non-residents open to the public are going to pay some type of a fee in order to be able to use the pool and the clubhouse? But I'm curious about what contract arrangements are proposed to be made with the Homeowners Association to make sure that they're fairly reimbursed and that those expenses don't get passed on to the homeowners as part of their monthly maintenance.
So the board of the Homeowners Association and the Metro District Board will be made up of homeowners. So in order for the district to finance those public improvements and to continue to own it, they have to be open to the public. But the district is authorized to charge a daily fee or an annual fee for the use of the pool, commensurate with the cost of providing that service. So as a political subdivision of the state, the district follows the same budgetary requirements of it's not allowed to make a profit. And the budget is a public document that's voted on after a public hearing and is open to residents or other members of the public if they want to see the operating costs of the pool.
Well, that wasn't precisely my concern. My concern was to make sure that the Homeowners Association, which of course is going to be governed by a board as well, can fairly zero out the cost, if you will, with the public fees so that there isn't an additional expense to the homeowners in the community. That's my concern. I don't want to see any cost borne by the homeowners that are attributable to the open public use of the clubhouse and the pool.
So that is a function of the boards. They will be setting the fees and the budget, and they will be residents. So they're.
But initially it's Albert that's going to be controlling the board because they're the developer. So I imagine that it's Albert as the developer who is going to be setting the initial fees for that, basically zeroing out the cost of that for the use of the public. So I imagine that there will be some kind of discussion about what potential costs are going to be incurred during the first, let's say 2-3 years before the development is completely sold out, that will stabilize, if you will, and zero out the costs as additional homeowners come on. Because it's going to be Albert that's paying those fees until the board is the property is fully turned over to the Homeowners Association after whatever percentage of homes are sold. So that's just my concern, that those costs aren't kind of like held back, and then later when people are expecting to pay X amount of dollars in maintenance per month, 2 years later, that doesn't have anything to do with new improvements. Costs are being added on to their monthly to compensate for the public use. So that is just a concern that I have, especially during the initial development year.
Mm-hmm. So until the homeowners association is up and running, the Metro District would be operating and managing the pool. And it would be through a contract with a company that provides pool services. We can write something in to address that, but I guess I would think if you're a homeowner, you're not interested in subsidizing.
That's exactly correct.
Yes.
You're not interested in subsidizing public use of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
So you're willing to pay your share because
Right.
that's part of your monthly maintenance fees include use of the pool and the clubhouse, but you don't want to be subsidizing the public. So you have to make sure the fees that are being charged to the public, which will be set by the homeowners association, okay, if they're the ones that are going to contractually be responsible for operating the pool and the clubhouse, you want to make sure that that cost is covered by whatever fees the public pays for that use.
Yes, and the Metro District will continue to own the pool and be responsible for that annual budget. So there will be a contract with the homeowners association, but the district is still responsible for that, and it's not a profit center. And we can include language to address the issue that the use by public be reviewed annually and attributed, and that fees be attributed to public use.
That I would definitely feel more comfortable with that language being added to whatever contractual contract is had with the homeowner association, because they're the ones that are going to be responsible for the maintenance, okay? That's what this says. And they will be the ones being responsible for the maintenance of the pool and the clubhouse, which is quite an extensive cost. They will be the ones actually contracting with the pool company to make sure that that maintenance is done in accordance with the standards that the homeowners association feels they need for their community. So that's my only concern here. I want to make sure that those costs don't get borne solely by the owners of the townhouses and the single-family dwellings that are paying monthly maintenance fees for that clubhouse and pool.
Right.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will open the public hearing. Does anybody here wish to speak to the Iliff Avenue Metropolitan District? Seeing none? Seeing one? Mr. Lambert.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Mr. Planning Board members. I am here tonight representing two organizations. First of all, Mark Lambert, representing Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sanitation District at 2325 South Wabash Street. The concern that we had has already been addressed, because previous to the start of the meeting we brought up that the financial budgets were incorrect in stating that this was in East Cherry Creek Valley Water Sanitation District. It is not. It is completely Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sand. So that has been corrected. The verbiage in the actual document was correct. We, as Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sand, do not have permit fees, so that will change dramatically and probably drop off of that budget from that standpoint. Also, the other part was we wanted to make sure that the wording was in there that once the in-ground piping was all taken care of, that it would be assigned over to us and built to our specifications, which is a requirement anyway. So from that standpoint, those are the only two comments that I had to make in regards to the water and sanitation districts information. Now, stopping there and now representing 4 Square Mile. From that standpoint, the issue of 4 Square Mile is of support for this because of the fact that, as some of you may know, that in 4 Square Mile, we do not have any recreational facilities from Arapahoe County. We're kind of a wasteland. The best we have is open space, and HARP fought for every bit of open space that we have out there. And so from this standpoint, this was an agreement to allow residents in the 4 Square Mile to have some type of recreational facility, i.e. a pool and possibly a clubhouse for use. So a lot of our members cannot join Cherry Creek Country Club, so this would be the next best thing, being right across the street from Cherry Creek Country Club. So from that standpoint, we're very happy for that. Also, just to state that in support of this project is the fact that the power lines that are dotting Iliff Avenue has been a constant source of issue. And when the Iliff corridor study was in and started out, the first thing was, got to bury the power lines. Problem is, who's going to take care of that? Because XL doesn't do it, and so we have to go to the private property property owners. And from that standpoint, luckily, Mr. Alpert is going to do that on his portion, which is about little over three-quarters of that from Yosemite to Wabash, and then Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sand is going to pick up the rest of it, so that one whole block will be completely clean, neat, and ready to go. So from that standpoint, we appreciate cooperation with Mr. Alpert and the project. So we wholeheartedly, from 4 Square Mile, support the project, as we have in the past for both the individual homes as well as the townhomes. Thank you.
I have a question for you. Has there been any resolution to the rodent problem?
I
occupied a lot
can't
of
speak. Right.
Previous meeting.
Well, and the previous meeting when that was talking about the single-family homes, what we're referring to is that we have on the corner of Wabash and Iliff the woodpile lot. Woodpile is very notorious for mice and rats, believe it or not. And from that standpoint, I can't address that directly because Mr. Alpert said he would look into exterminating and working with the woodpile owner to see how they're doing it. Because as you heard previously, the township, which is right directly east on Yosemite from this property, they were very much concerned that once they start digging, that it's going to be Katie by the door for all those little four-legged animals moving across Yosemite. So I can't answer it directly. We certainly are continuing to watch it, and I think that question would be better placed to Mr. Alpert.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this case? Then we will close the public hearing. Thank you, and bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration. Any other concerns? Anybody would like to make a motion on the Iliff Avenue Metropolitan District Service Plan?
I'll make the motion.
Very good. Mr. Woolman?
Consistent with the staff recommendations, this is an approval with conditions. In the case of SD 18001, Iliff Avenue Metropolitan District Service Plan, I reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment as presented at the hearings, and hereby move to recommend approval of this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions, and I'm going to read those. 1, the applicant will make changes or modifications to the service plan as recommended by the Planning Commission, and 2, the applicant will address any internal or external referral comments, especially those concerning the maintenance fees that the homeowners pay, zeroed out against the fees for the pool and clubhouse open to the public.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Miller will second the motion. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion as amended by Mrs. Woolman? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item number 3 is case P17-016, the Dove Valley Business Park, the Randy Ross Tennis Center Specific Development Plan. And Mrs. Orkland Larson will present for the county.
Good evening, Commissioners. Molly Orkill Larson, Senior Planner with the Public Works Department. The County Attorney has reviewed the public notice and has determined that the applicant has met all of the public notice requirements, thereby establishing jurisdiction. What's before you this evening is a specific development plan that proposes an approximately 58,000 square foot private indoor tennis facility with 6 courts. In order to accommodate the proposed tennis facility, the existing lots 5 and 6 are being reconfigured through the replatting process. Lot 5 will be increased to 3.3 acres, and Lot 6 will be decreased to 1 acre in size. The applicant is also within the Centennial Airport and Barnes planning area, which is also known as CAPA. This application does comply with CAPA's design requirements by addressing all the 4 sides of the building. Having accented entrance provides horizontal and vertical articulation. The applicant is present here tonight and has a presentation for you. And if you have any questions for me, I'll turn it over to him. Otherwise, any questions?
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Casey.
Good evening. My name is Casey Audrina, and I'm with Audrina Architecture. We are the architect of record for this project, Randy Ross Tennis Center. And we do have Randy Ross in attendance tonight as well, if there are any questions for him following my presentation of the project. So just to start off, just to give you a general idea of the vicinity, we're basically at the corner of Broncos Parkway and Potomac, so directly south of the Denver Broncos training facility. And basically these are the lots that Randy is in ownership of. Just kind of looking at that existing site, so in this diagram, north is to the right. These were the existing 2 parcels that Randy had purchased. They were previously lots 5 and 6, and just due to the nature and the general the size necessity for the tennis facility, we needed to replat these 2 lots. So just starting off, so they're both pretty close to about 2 acres in size. And to accommodate the building footprint, what we did was, with the replat process, these will be now lots 1 and 2. So basically we grew lot 1 to 3.13 acres and reduced lot 2 down to 1 acre. So as you can see, the tennis facility is laid out, the site plan for lot 1, showing the lot configuration. So here is South Wheeling Court. We have 2 site access points with a full drive loop that circles the building. We're proposing a total of 66 parking spaces with looking at Randy's total anticipated maximum demand. He never sees the facility demanding more than 58 parking spaces. So we're supplying more than enough parking on site for the anticipated maximum volume of vehicles onto the site, so as to not put any on-street parking demand in the area. And just kind of a quick hours of operation for Randy's operation is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then on the weekends, it would be 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Here's just kind of exterior elevations of the facility. Given the unique structure and demands of a tennis facility, it brings itself to eliminate any sort of interior columns or obstructions as to create obstructions for the tennis courts. That's where this air dome structure became a very efficient, cost-effective method to use to kind of create those fans that were needed. But part of our challenge was the design challenge of making a bubble unique, giving it some articulation and architectural character, rather than just having a dome that sits on the ground. We actually raised it on a 10-foot concrete wall that wraps the perimeter of the building. So that dome will sit on that concrete wall. And due to the very unique structural loads that are created by this air dome, the structure has these, what we call counterforts or buttresses that go around, and we'll be able to see those a little bit better detail in other renderings. But it created a nice articulation around the building so as to break up the long facade. These don't show it in great detail, but we'll see that a little bit better. We wanted to create a nice focal entrance that really exemplifies it. There's no question of where the entrance is to this facility. So here's a better rendering that kind of shows those counterforts as to break up the kind of linear facade of this structure. And then we're creating kind of a steel cornice element that kind of mends the joint between the air dome and the top of the concrete wall. And then again, you can see kind of the emphasis we wanted to place on the entry. Just so you can kind of see the program a little bit better. So the front of the building, the entrance of the building faces west. So 6 total indoor tennis courts, 3 on both sides of a central clubhouse function to the facility. And this is a private club tennis operation, so it's a membership organization. Then part of the air dome structure, we obviously need these pretty large mechanical units that sit on the east side of the building, and we wanted to create nice concrete screen walls for those elements so as not to be visible from Potomac. So there's the floor plan. Then we'll just do a little bit more enlarged floor plan. So here's the clubhouse area. We'll have a reception area, some locker rooms and restrooms here, some office space, a little game area with ping pong, and then we have a little workout facility here with some more kind of office conference room functions there. And then there will be a partial mezzanine, which will serve as a viewing platform to 3 tennis courts on both sides of that central court. So this will be kind of a nice place to stand up there and look over to see the 3 tennis courts beyond and kind of watch the participants. So that's really a quick breakdown of our project. I would open it up to any questions that you might have for our team. Yeah.
I have a quick question in light of the winds today. How does that bubble structure perform in the wind?
Hopefully well, yeah. So it's a double-linered, very, very thick material, and it is double-linered, and it has its R30 continuous insulation. So there's actually two layers of membrane, which is a very thick membrane, and then all of these are steel cables that basically encompass it, and that's attached to the top of the concrete wall. So Everything about the structure has obviously been designed to meet all of the wind categories and snow loads and all that fun stuff for our area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more question. You did mention that there was a conference area.
Yeah, a very small conference room, mainly for staff gatherings.
Okay, because I was curious when you mentioned that whether or not it was contemplated that food would be served there. Just out of curiosity.
You know, it probably, in my estimation, I think this conference room would be for staff. For Randy's staff, actually, the conference room is right here, and this is pro offices. So the conference room is relatively small. But there are other areas of the facility that could facilitate functions like that, where they may bring in some food or something, you know. So that is a possibility.
Okay, because I didn't know whether there were plans to have any kind of refrigeration and cooking equipment.
Yeah, not right now.
Okay.
So right now, there's definitely no in-house cooking equipment as a part of this facility. So there's really the only thing. There's a small break area here, you know, on the upper mezzanine, which is just a sink and refrigerator. And then there's a small refrigerator, and that's more for employees just bringing their lunch. So it really would be catered in if they were to have anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is this going to be for competitive tennis and not for lessons because you said it was private?
Yeah, and Randy may be able to speak to this, but my understanding is it's a membership. So it would be, you know, members of this facility would definitely take on lessons and whatnot. So it's probably opposite. It's less for competitive, you know, big tournaments. That's not anticipated to happen at this facility. So it's more in-house club membership, participation, and lessons as well. Does that sound accurate? Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Does Mr. Ross want to speak to this proposal?
Unless you guys have questions for him.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll open the public hearing for anyone else that may wish to speak to this proposal. Anybody? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration. Anybody wish to take a step and make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Lassers, thank you very much.
In the case of P17-016, Randy Ross Tennis Center, specific development plan, Planning Commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and the public comment as presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions 1 through 4.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I second, Madam Chair.
Motion has been seconded. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. We will move on to item number 4, which is case number P17-004, the Dove Valley Business Park 16, Lester Business Plaza, the final development plan. And representing the county is Mr. Skinner.
Okay, so Bill Skinner for the County Planning Division. It's kind of interesting to see how many of the staff compress the initials into a word like Lester and how many of them just call it Elsteria. It sounds like one word. But essentially what we have is a final development plan. It's part of the PUD process that the county set aside on April 1st of 2018. This will be one of the last final development plans that we see coming through the county. Final development plans are part of a 2-step PUD process. It requires an initial step, a preliminary development plan, where the applicant is largely setting maximums and minimums and allowed land uses. That was completed in, I believe we started that in 2015, completed that in 2016, or maybe 1 year closer than that. This follow-on final development plan was anticipated throughout that preliminary development plan process. So what we have is a flex office space type of a building with some service doors located on a lot north of Centennial Airport on Adam Aircraft Circle. The area is surrounded by a combination of, I want to say, some of the buildings are pure office building, but they have a light industrial warehouse style appearance. And we have some that are actual storage units, and one that is more warehouse and only a little bit of office space about 2 lots removed to the west on Adam Aircraft Circle. Staff compared this to the county's final development plan standards and the underlying, pretty much for the county, brand new preliminary development plan, and found that this complies with that preliminary development plan. You'll see comments are in the staff report from Aqua. There are still some issues to work out. I believe they still have some issues to work out, largely technical matters of the water and wastewater supply and removal system. And then the fire department continues to review the design. Now, having said that, the fire department's comments are a bit dusty. So before staff moves this on to the board for signature, preferably before the board's hearing, I'm going to go back to South Metro and see if I can get a letter from them saying, yeah, before the hearing, we're going to try and get a letter that says issues are addressed, we're fine with this. Absolutely, before I forward this on to the board for a signature and tell them I'm comfortable, doing that, we will make sure everything is good with the fire department and we have it in writing. Same thing with Aqua. That's why those conditions are there. Even though the comments are largely technical in nature, these kind of things remain in flux and are worked out throughout the final parts of the review. In this case, those 2 comments are the county safety belt, but we'll take care of this. The applicant, I don't have any doubt that they're going to do that, but we still like to have a safety belt just in case. You'll see that City of Centennial submitted comments largely pertaining to architecture, perimeter fencing around the storage, and asked about lighting. I think those are the 3 main points. The lighting is for security and safety in the outdoor storage yard. This is an office flex building. I did not mention earlier there is a large outdoor storage yard going along with it. The perimeter fence Centennial recommends is part of this plan. It's in place. The architectural comments largely go to the city standards and the CAPA Centennial Airport Environs Planning Area Overlay Document, an agreement between the county and the City of Centennial. This lot is not in that CAPA arrangement. It's not required to comply with CAPA. Having said that, if you've seen the architectural elevations, it's not a bad-looking building. They've gone farther than they had to on this property, given that their previous document was a 1985 PDP called the Valley Air Park, where a common PDP now is many pages long. That Air Park document is just a handful of text on 2 big sheets. What I'm getting at is I'm pleased with the building, and despite the city's comments, I do think they have done a good job of providing the county with a structure that we can be pleased with. Centennial Airport itself had a comment about cranes. That's very typical in this area. That won't be any problem for the applicant to submit the 7460 form. It's not even a matter of requesting an approval. They simply have to tell the FAA, hey, we may have a crane here on a certain date, and the FAA will say, if it's over a certain height, put a light on top of it. The crane operators do that as a matter of course anyway. I think that's all I have to say. Staff recommendations for approval with the conditions stated. The Planning Commission can remove those if they wish. Staff would prefer you didn't. And I'm open to questions. The applicant's here as well. And what would you like to talk about?
I'm curious about the proportion of the lot for the storage yard. There's reference to a towing company. Is that exclusively what the storage yard is for?
So, good question. At the time this project first came to the county, we know that Troy Porras, who's here tonight to speak, who owns the company that'll be building, owning, and operating this, possibly, was considering this as a location for their offices and a place to bring towed vehicles. That was quite the topic of discussion at the board hearing on the preliminary development plan. The board amended the proposed uses, and if you look at the very last use, the board made a point to exclude vehicle maintenance and salvage operations, which the owner, Mr. Porras, said, yep, we can do that. Right there at the hearing, right there at the podium, and then he put it in writing for us. So possibly we'll have to ask Mr. Porras tonight if his plans have firmed up for the building. It was also possible that he had other users who may want to use this site. And last conversation we had, that was still up in the air. So what the county is doing is setting in place the allowed uses for the property in the building, and they'll have to stay within that list of uses. This is unusual. Usually we know when we approve a site, it may change hands. What happens inside that building, say a commercial storefront or something, may go from nail salon to hair salon to who knows what. In this case, the building is a little bit in flux beforehand, so all we were trying to do is make sure the site was well designed and could function, and that there was screening around that lot, just in case. Being outdoor storage, we should screen it anyway, towing or no. But let's ask that question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Skinner? Okay, then. Thank you, Bill. We'll call you back when need be, and we'll hear from the applicant, please.
Sure. You don't go too far, Bill.
I'm Troy Porras. This is my building, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it.
Well, will you explain the use and is the towing operation going to be part of it?
Certainly. Yes. In fact, our plan is to use probably less than a quarter of the building for our offices, for towing business, right, to all the county and salespeople and that sort of stuff, and some portion of the yard. We're not sure if it's an acre or two or maybe 3 for towing and storage. We've been in discussion, so the vast majority of it really is just a spec building. We've talked to, everything, of course, in accordance with approved uses, but, equipment rental and storage, construction companies. We talked to a wholesale roofing business. As it turns out, you guys know, you see a lot of plans. There's almost no buildings with any kind of outdoor storage anymore, and so there's tremendous demand. There are dozens of kinds of businesses that need some outdoor storage, and so our plan is to use it. So there certainly will be a towing component, and we talked, as Bill said, very explicitly with the Board of County Commissioners about that. And I can't remember because I don't have the list. The last one specifically excluded salvage cars, but there's another one that specifically allows a towing impound facility, and that's the kind of towing that my towing business does. So we don't do any police towing, we don't do wrecks. It's basically, if someone parks badly, in a handicap space, for example, without a handicap placard, and property calls us, we tow it. And so our towing impound yard really just looks like a parking lot. It's just a bunch of cars that park badly and are waiting to get picked up by their upset owners.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none? Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing regarding this proposal for the Dove Valley Business Park. Does anybody here wish to speak to that? We don't have anybody signed up, but that doesn't mean you can't come forward. You have to come forward, please, and give us your name and address. Yes.
I just want to know what kind of screening.
You need to speak to us and give your name and address.
All right, it's Mike Evans. I own the property in the middle of this project and the tennis facility. So, curious about those projects. But yeah, I'd like to know what screening means. Is it 10-foot fencing. What do we mean by screening?
You want an explanation of the fencing?
Yeah.
Can the applicant address the fencing specifically?
It's nice to meet my neighbor, who also has outdoor storage, and so I assume that his property has screening in accordance with county rules, and that's what we intend to do as well. Whatever it is we're required to do by the county to screen outdoor storage consistent with his property is what we plan to do.
How high will your fencing be?
I'm not sure what's required by the county. Again, whatever's required. And well, let me be clear. Actually, our plan is for the property on one side butts his property, which is basically outdoor storage as well. On the back side is the airport. There's already a fence there, and then on the west side. So basically, the north side faces the street. There, our plan is to go way beyond whatever the county requires and to really make it architecturally, nice. And then, on the sides, where basically the public can't see it, we'll certainly follow the rules, but we don't intend to do anything fancy.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are there any other comments? Anybody else wish to come forward? All right, then we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration. If there aren't any other questions, can we have a motion? Or not?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. In the case of P17-004 LSTRE FDP, I have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment as presented at the hearing, and hereby move to recommend approval of this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following 3 conditions as outlined in the report.
Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
And I guess I want to underscore that approval is received from South Metro Fire before this goes much further. Okay. All right. We have the second to the motion. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Very good. There's one final item on tonight's agenda, and that is case number AS117-001, L17-001, the IREA Eastern Reliability Update Project, 1041 with a location and extent. And representing the county is Mr. Skinner.
I think while I go through the county part, would you care to set up your laptop? Okay. So, ASI 17001 is the Intermountain Rural Electrical Association Eastern Reliability Upgrade 1041 Matters of State Interest Permit. Certain projects are large enough that they fall into a classification that exceeds most of the more typical county planning and review processes, and they bump into something called a 1041 Matters of State Interest. Pertains largely to things like utility companies, or were someone to propose, a new airport, for example, which I'm not saying we have one, but something like that with impacts that could be significant. They bump up to this level. Our 1041 regulations are patterned on requirements from the state of Colorado, and it's county staff's job to look for compliance with those regulations and also interject the county's wishes into this. This one has a tie and some improvements on an existing electrical substation, and there is also, in addition to the 1041 permit, case L17011, IREA Eastern Reliability Upgrade Location and Extent, which is largely a site plan that goes along with this. So the 1041 deals with more than just the site plan aspects. It also goes into great detail if you thumb through the 100 and some odd page document in looking at cultural resources, impacts to wildlife. The list is significant. An environmental assessment. I spent a fair amount of time in that document over the last few months, and the staff position is they're complying with the requirements of the 1041. Actually, before I get into that, I need to go back and talk about the location of this. The 1041 location extent are applications for a little more than 4 linear miles of new transmission line extending from the Southern County boundary along the eastern side of Brick Center Road north to an existing IREA substation on the northeast corner of Brick Center Line Road in Bellevue. The applicant is ultimately going to have a 60-foot wide easement, I believe, that they're going to be in, easement/right-of-way. That'll be removed a little bit from Brick Center Road. I'd have to look up the dimension because I don't want to guess, but we can look it up if you want. The applicant has informed staff that they will be talking to the property owners and working out easements and agreements along all of this. This is part of a longer project that extends down into Elbert County. The county staff, Arapahoe County staff, only looks at 4 miles in Arapahoe County. Now, as far as transmission lines go, I would say it's fairly typical. We're not going to see anything unexpected in the installation. The one part of this process that I found somewhat unique and actually confusing was after the referrals to the external agencies, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a yes or a no comment or a no issue or anything. Like you to have confidence in our staff, I redid the referrals and pointed out we didn't hear from anyone. So everyone said, oh, so sorry. It was just an odd coincidence. You know, the one project people didn't respond to was this one. I did hear back from people at that point. Not a lot. But it's proof that they actually got the information. We heard from Department of Wildlife 4 or 5 days ago. They said, due to the nature of this being along an existing road highway corridor and the narrow width of the easement, they thought this would have, quotes, minimal impacts to wildlife, close quotes. The Bennett Water, the Water District, groundwater, let me look it up. I'd rather be right than half right. North Kiowa Bijou Groundwater District, excuse me. They got a hold of me and they said they really think, even though they administer the groundwater rights in this area, that they did not see this as having any impact. And had one other who got a hold of me. Fire Protection District felt like this would not have any impact on their operations. Other than that, not a phone call, not an email, not a letter. Staff usually takes this as a good sign, but the signs themselves don't go up informing the people who live right there in the area or drive by it until after that referral period's closed. We have some people signed up today. I'll be interested in hearing what they have to say. Close out my part, turn this over to the applicant by saying staff recommendation is for approval. It appears to be in compliance with everything we can compare it to. We would forward that recommendation out to the board. The Planning Commission is in the same role tonight. You're making a recommendation to the board on the 1041. However, you are the approval decision on the location and extent. Should you decide to approve the location and extent, and not that I expect this, the board denies the 1041, we'll consider that location and extent largely null and void, because without the 1041, can't construct it anyway. But that approval may stay in place while the 1041 gets revamped. But just to restate, tonight the PC will be forwarding a recommendation on the 1041, but you will be doing the yes-no determination on the location and extent.
Can you speak to the letter that came to us this afternoon?
Thank you.
At a late moment?
Very much, yes. Staff did receive, and I'm glad you said that, staff received a letter this afternoon on about somewhere between 12 and 2 from the firm of Campbell, Killen, Burton and Ray LLC. It's a law firm, and they are representing the homeowner who owns, I believe, the land abutting, actually the land where 3 miles of this 4-mile corridor will go. They would like some additional time to discuss the potential impacts to their property that this power line may have. I mean, that means the Planning Commission can maybe, hopefully we'll have someone here tonight with attached to this letter. Planning Commission can hear what we get tonight and then decide how you want to handle this. I mean, you have all the typical options. You can approve, deny, or continue for more information. As always, we can ask the applicant to come back up as we learn more things throughout the evening. We can ask me to come back up as we learn more throughout the evening.
I have a question. So when were the residents around the proposed power line informed about this?
Well, we understand the IREA has been in discussion with them for some time. The county is not involved in those discussions
What does sometime mean?
directly.
What does sometime mean?
We'll ask IREA tonight. They said they'd already been in discussions when we had the pre-submittal meeting. Beyond that, I can't put exact dates on it for you, but we can ask. That's one of the reasons they're here tonight. And feel free to clarify. I got the request for the 1041 from the law firm, I was going to say probably about a week and a half ago. It may be that they saw the signs go up on site and that initiated the interest.
And when did the signs go up on site?
They have to be up 15 days before the hearing. I believe they hit the ground on April 2nd.
Okay.
That's fairly typical. I mean, it's not unusual for the signs to be up for the notice period and not a whole lot longer. Part of that is because the signs include the date of the Planning Commission hearing. So even if we wanted to do that notice 2 months in advance, we wouldn't be planning this date and we wouldn't have the information to put on the sign.
I understand that.
Yeah, I just don't want the period that the signs are up to reflect badly. I mean, it's partly a result of the process.
Bill, I have a question for you.
Certainly.
So it sounds like from my read that the easements are not in place. They're being discussed, but nothing has been confirmed. Is that correct?
That may be the case.
So in that case, then, if we were to approve the location and extent or recommend approval on the 1041, would that impact the rights of those property owners?
I think it enables the easements to be put in place, but it's still up to IREA to work out the private matter of acquiring the actual right to access that ground, which is what an easement is.
Right.
The county won't necessarily be a party to those negotiations, but we would certainly anticipate they go where they're depicted on the location and extent.
So let me ask one more question. So is this common that someone comes in and wants a location and extent in the 1041 and has no permission whatsoever to be on the homeowner's property?
1041s being somewhat uncommon themselves, we don't bring a lot of them to you. It occurs with 1041s. I mean, typically on the site plans we bring to you, they're smaller and the matter is well under control because the ownership is involved in all of that. When we have a utility line crossing multiple private properties, it may still be in play at the time the county's working on the approval.
Okay, thank you.
In the report, and I guess it was referenced in this letter, and I don't know the merit of the issues in this letter.
Certainly.
When it comes to me so late in the game, I don't feel like I had time to look at it. But were the other corridors considered before it came to you? Was the decision, I understand the one that has been chosen,
I understand.
the shortest distance, but are there other ones that could still be considered that wouldn't impact the landowner so much?
Possibly. So to take that kind of in steps, yes, when the 1041 permit is submitted to the county, the applicant has used a set of criteria provided by the state largely, and they have looked at no fewer than 3 different alternatives. And based on what they learn, they apply those criteria to all of the 3 alternative routes. And based on the results, they report to the county what the preferred route is. I haven't had a 1041 yet where the county has said, use another one, but we may be able to have some discussions tonight. It's possible that that is an option. The county can recommend a different corridor. Now, we do that, it'll be shifting, and I don't say this positively or negatively. It's just an observation. It'll move the corridor to another location that scored less favorably in the evaluation, and it will shift it to another landowner's property. In this case, the staff was pleased to see that they were running parallel to an existing highway, which itself already cuts a line across the landscape. We thought that was preferable to something crossing open ground, and there's one piece of infrastructure there now. We're adding to it in the same way that a recent Excel power line was looked on favorably by the county because they were running up an existing transmission line corridor. We like to see these clustered. In the case of the IREA application, it's an electrical reliability proposal. I would recommend that we ask IREA tonight if there's a reason why it hasn't been placed in an existing corridor. I suspect, and my understanding is, one of the goals in the reliability plan is system redundancy and separation. So should some catastrophic event take a line down, for example, a tornado, it doesn't take down the line and the redundant line at the same time. They're separated by some distance. But let's please address that to the applicant tonight. They'll probably have a more technical answer than I gave you.
Any other questions for Mr. Skinner? All right, thank you.
Okay.
We'll hear from IREA.
Good evening. I'm Dale Murphy. I'm a project manager with Power Engineers, acting on behalf of IREA for the Eastern Reliability Upgrade Project. Listening to the questions, I should be able to answer all those within the presentation I've developed. If not, obviously we can talk about it afterwards. So first I wanted to just touch on Intermountain Rural Electric Association, or IREA, and the background. IREA is a not-for-profit electrical distribution utility, so that is different from various utilities around the country and in the state of Colorado as well. I did want to touch on that this is not a project where it's profit-driven. IREA is a member-owned utility. Everyone that receives electricity from IREA is a member of IREA. So they do try to take their members' interests collectively as a whole body into account for these type of projects. As you see on the map, they do serve a good portion of Arapahoe County further out east. So the project we're talking about tonight is intended to connect the existing Kiowa substation in Elbert County on the bottom of the map to the existing Brick Center substation in Arapahoe County. Just to explain this map a little bit for you, the green and black circles are existing IREA substations, and the green lines are existing IREA transmission lines. And Bill did a pretty good job there explaining redundancies and why we're doing this project, but it is a reliability project. Right now, all the distribution lines that feed houses and businesses out of the Kiowa substation, the distribution lines that feed out of that expand into Elbert County and Arapahoe County. And so right now, and I apologize, I don't have my trusty laser pointer, so right now between Ponderosa Park and Kiowa substation, if that transmission line does go down for any reason, weather, tornado, extreme winds, a car hitting a pole, for instance, that does render the Kiowa substation dark and all the distribution lines out of that substation will go dark as well. It has happened. It has happened in a relatively recent past due to weather events. And the intention of this project is to bring another 115 kilovolt line from Brick Center substation south down to the Kiowa substation, such that if there is an issue with one or both of the lines, the other line could then keep the substation energized and continue to feed the distribution. So from a redundancy standpoint, it is considered, as Bill said, that if you put another line on the same pole, we call it a double circuit line. Right now, the line between, I'll just say Ponderosa Park and Kiowa substation, that's a single circuit line, so there's a single 115 kilovolt line between those substations. If you put another line on there and a car hits a pole, it takes down both lines. So in this sense, with this map shows it, you can see a pretty obvious hole in their system as it stands, and the intention of this project is to fill that hole and allow for some redundancy and reliability. Additionally, to talk reliability a little more in detail, we all deal with this in our daily lives. Reliability of your car, reliability of your TV. When it comes to electricity, there are federal mandates that IREA as a utility maintains their system to a higher level of reliability. So even if people don't experience power loss on a daily basis, a weekly basis, you'd hear about it if they did. There's a higher level of reliability required, and the intention of this project, which has been on IREA's planning documents for several years, is to maintain the requirements of reliability that federal regulations require. So as Bill indicated, and the map shows, it is about a 16.5-mile total transmission line between two substations. About 4 miles is in Arapahoe County. To correct a couple things, it's a 75-foot right-of-way. Now, for this project in specific, there's a couple variations on that in that when IREA parallels Arapahoe County right-of-way, which it is intending to do for this line route, there's allowed sharing of that right-of-way, such that if you envision the transmission poles with the wires on it, you can bring the pole close to the edge of the existing right-of-way and kind of share that right-of-way. So that is the intention, with the caveat that Arapahoe County did request that IREA account for a future larger right-of-way that currently is there. Right now there's a 60-foot Arapahoe County right-of-way, and we were requested to account for a 114-foot future right-of-way. So the line is actually shifted a little further east on Brick Center Road than otherwise that it would have been to account for that future right-of-way. But generally, 75-foot is what's necessary for the easement. Here's a couple of pictures of the typical poles that will go up. These are pictures of current IREA transmission line structures. Typically, you'll have a single wood pole. That's the majority of our line. Wherever we have an angle on the line where it turns 90 degrees or 45 degrees, there'll be a steel, what we call a dead end pole, and that'll have a concrete foundation on it and look very similar to what's in the picture. So from a timeline standpoint, we've been working on this project since the latter part of 2016. This is not something IREA takes lightly or is a quick process. We do understand there's a lot of variances or various considerations that had to be taken into account of where this line gets built and what the intention of the line is. So we did start in the latter part of 2016. We did start with our public outreach in June of 2017, and I believe that was one of the questions that we had of when is communications with landowners, how long has that been going on? So June of 2017 was the first public open house. So as we went through that and developed routing options, right now we're in a permitting phase, and in parallel, you'll see on the schedule, we're working on land acquisitions, and this is and it's fairly typical in the electrical utility industry, especially with longer transmission lines. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg. You're working through a permitting process to get an approval on a route. You're in parallel working with landowners, but you want to also make sure that the county doesn't find any issue with the route you're working on. So it's in my experience, it's not typical to come to these type of hearings with 100% of easements already acquired. So we're following, in my opinion, a pretty standard process right now for getting approval on the line route. So as we're moving through 2018, we're working on the detailed design of the transmission line, and the intention is in 2019 to start construction and wrap it up by the end of 2019 and have it energized. So from a routing standpoint, we do have a pretty thorough process that Bill started to outline, and we start with a project area, pretty simple in this case, point A to point B with the 2 substations, outline a project area. We're obviously not going to go 150 miles to the west to go north just to come back, so we try to condense the project area, then start collecting land use requirements, county requirements, state requirements, any federal requirements that might apply, and look for opportunities to where it seems like a good location to put a line, and then look for constraints where it's not a good location to put a line. There's reference, I believe, in one of the other applications to an airport, so that's something we have considerations for as well, of proximity to airports as one consideration. Then work through different county coordination, working with agencies on our permit application, start working with the public to inform them of the project purpose and need and the schedule, develop our route segments. I'll show you a map of that. Then evaluate those route segments, develop, in this case, 4 alternative routes, and then select a preferred route. So this map does show our rough project area between Kiowa Substation and Brick Center Substation. We did run through a total of 45 to 50 different criteria. That can vary anything from proximity to existing infrastructure, such as roadways, proximity to existing electrical infrastructure, like other transmission lines, proximity to existing homes. All these are considerations of where we would put a transmission line. So we ran through all these criteria, trying to identify constraint areas, opportunity areas, and then start developing route segments. I'm not going to read that, but well, that's the land use criteria, and then the environmental evaluation criteria as well. Everything from endangered species, animal nests, nesting areas, wetlands areas. All these are considerations of where you'd put a transmission line. So public involvement, as I stated, June of 2017, June 6th of 2017, we did have a open house to inform the public of what the project was about, what the intention was, what the timeline was. We sent out notices to all landowners in the project area. Over 1,100 notices were sent out to the public. We pulled down property data from Elbert County and Arapahoe County to identify landowners and sent out notifications to tell them this is when the open house is going to be. We had one at Cherokee Trail High School. We did invite Elbert County and Arapahoe County to all of the open houses. We just tried to position them, one in Arapahoe County and then in Elbert County. And then in September, we did what we call round 2, but it was a single open house. Again, at that point, identifying the preferred alternative route at that meeting in September. In addition to the open houses, and during the process of the open house and the notifications for the open house, we did inform every landowner in the project area of a project website that we set up, which still to this day is up and running and has information related to the project, has contact information, email address, 1-800 number to call. There's links within the website if there's questions or comments, we would be contacted. I personally have responded to the majority of those comments and questions that come in. The email is directed to my email address for work. We have gotten several comments, questions, taken phone calls throughout this process since June. Again, want to emphasize we in our estimation reached out pretty thoroughly to make sure everyone was aware of the project and didn't rely on the signs a couple weeks ahead of time that for people know. I will say that they have an effect. I think we put up 6 signs along a 4-mile stretch, so they get some attention as well as people drive into work and into business and such. part of the website, there is this is a screenshot of the application we had, what we call GeoVoice, but you could actually zoom in on a Google Earth type image with the line overlaid, and you could zoom in to figure out, well, is the line on my property or adjacent to my property or nowhere near my property, and actually tie a question directly to your location. So this is the 41 route segments, and so those black dots are nodes where we'll identify a route segment to get from a certain point to another certain point. And really this is just to, again, try to address where do we have constraints, where do we have opportunities to put a line segment. Once we define these, in this case, 41 different route segments, we evaluate each of those route segments to determine, is there something that isn't quite obvious to us? Do we have, potentially an endangered species, a nest or something along that route segment that might devalue that route segment from an overall project consideration? From there, we did eliminate several of the route segments for various reasons, county regulations, state regulations, and some of our land use criteria. Developed 4 end-to-end routes. So now each of these routes, A through D, connect from Kiowa to Brick Center Substation. Again, went through an evaluation of each of those routes to determine what the best scoring route would be, where it had the least impact, and the best score from the criteria. So the preferred alternative, Route A, is what is selected and is what in the L&E document and the 1041 permit application. We did have to select a route in order to submit our permit application. I think there was questions about alternatives, but our understanding is we have to select a route and request permitting of that route. This route was presented at that September open house meeting. So in summary, it's our opinion that the 1041 application and meets all the criteria set out by Arapahoe County guidelines, and as well as the location and extent document is in conformance with the Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan. Any questions I can answer that I might have not answered initially?
I have a question, Jane.
Yes, Mr. Larson.
First question is, so is that current Kiowa line, is that on Highway 86 or Bayou Gulch, or where is that one running?
So it runs directly west out of the Kiowa substation. It is not on, I'm sorry with the road, 86 as we said, or that's the road going into Kiowa?
Well, Franktown through Elizabeth to Kiowa.
Yeah, okay, it's north of that, running, I'll say in general, and parallel to that, but well north of it by a couple of miles.
And then also regarding the path that you've identified, what is the nearest home? How many feet or miles, or where is that?
Sure. So there's actually a home. We've only got, from an easement standpoint, I want to address this. Sorry. So a couple hundred feet. To answer your question clearly, it's I think about 250 feet, if not more. The line actually, there's no structures on that property that has that is in close proximity to a home, and it's just we are working on getting an easement because there's a small sliver. If I had a pen, I could draw it up here. It's just basically a small sliver where the wires essentially would cross the aerial plane of the parcel boundary. So we're just getting we're requesting a small easement for that, but there's no actual towers or lines on the property.
Thank you.
Sure.
At your open houses, did you have, in general, positive feedback or not?
Generally, I would say we had positive feedback. I don't want to discount it because I know it'll be talked about. We had some landowners come in and have negative feedback as well. Questions about the line route and not wanting it on their property, and proposing potential alternatives that were considered. But generally, yeah, it was relatively positive.
How many people showed up approximately to each one of those meetings?
Not many.
Okay.
10 or so.
Yeah. I appreciate diversity. I was in the telecommunications industry for about 15 years. So I like my fiber lines to be as far apart as possible. So when one goes down, they can self-heal and go the other way. So I'm curious how many miles between the primary line that you have now and your proposed route, what is the distance between those two routes? Generally, I mean at the narrowest point, let's just put it that way.
So we might not be following, I might not be following your question exactly. You're talking about the existing line into the Kiowa substation.
Correct, and what the proposed route, you know.
So they don't parallel each other, so it's perpendicular. The existing line into Kiowa right now comes in from the west and runs east-west generally. And then this line is running north-south generally. Yeah, so we are separating them from that standpoint. It's really taking feeds all the way from the north side of their system, bringing it south, while we currently have feeds from the west side of their system.
Because, I mean, your diagram, I mean, looks like you're running a parallel line.
Let me try to go back to that. This is where I don't have my clicker. So this and I know this doesn't show the line, and maybe that was the confusing part. That space between Brick Center substation and Kiowa substation is generally where we're running the new line.
Right.
So there isn't anything parallel to that currently.
Correct. But then again, I am looking at one of your primary lines, right, which goes, let's just say, from Foxfield south to, Franktown, because I'm looking at your existing substations, right?
Do you mind if I just walk up to the...
No, not at all. If you take from Foxfield down...
sure. Okay.
Right, down, right, exactly. I mean, I get the point that you're creating basically a loop. Okay, because that's your loop.
But that is the loop.
Right.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. I think. Yes. So yes, this is the loop.
Right.
That we've called it.
Right.
This is the loop that we're trying to create, but essentially the new line is coming north-south and.
Right.
To help support the east-west line.
Correct, and that's what I was contemplating when I asked my question about the parallel. I understand that you're connecting this into.
I didn't realize the parallel that far away.
Yeah, essentially into a ring, okay, which is how telecommunications networks create their diversity by multiple rings. So that's why I was concerned about the distance that we were talking about for true diversity purposes. I mean, obviously you have your substations, and your substations play into where you can switch from when there's a break.
Yep. Yeah, and you'll notice too, depending on the location of a substation, some have 3, some have 4 lines into them. Just depends on the how much load is coming out of that coming into that substation.
And the height, again, I know it's in your documentation, but the height...
Anywhere from 60 to 85, 90 feet, is roughly. It really is going to depend on where that pole sits in the terrain and how high it has to go. But that's generally, it's anywhere from 60 to 85, I think is what we listed out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So why was Kiowa Bennett Road ruled out? Because there is power lines already running north and south along that corridor.
Are you talking about for Elbert County?
To get from Brick Center to go east, and then come down Kiowa Bennett, and then back into Kiowa.
Yeah, let me pull that up just to maybe be able to explain it a little bit.
It's one of the routes. At least that's the way I read your map.
All the way at the end.
The one, so in there.
Sure. So, and apologies on it that I'm not going to remember every detail of every route with it, but the primary driver for the route selected was parallel to existing infrastructure. There is a electrical distribution line running along Brick Center Road. There's also Brick Center Road itself that you generally do try to parallel existing infrastructure. To go east, which we did consider, we would have to cut through various properties and make the line longer, cut over the creek, depending twice or once, as well. That's shown up there that we would have to go east to. And then there's also considerations for where we could connect into in Elbert County as well. So that was and Kiowa Bennett Road in Elbert County was not allowed by their regulations.
So they're already on Route B. Which route already has power lines?
So Route A, the route we've selected, has distribution. I don't want to give you a false impression of that. So it's much smaller poles, single wires on them, but existing distribution lines that are running on the east side of Brick Center Road.
On Route A.
That's correct.
It goes all the way from Brick Center down?
It does not go all the way. No, it doesn't. It goes for, I'd say, you guys, quarter of it maybe.
Okay, so you would just be adding to something that's already there.
Planning.
Take that down.
It may help if you explain that distribution lines are the smaller lines that get to the individual properties as opposed to a transmission.
Yeah, I definitely didn't want to give the impression that we were paralleling a large transmission line. This is a distribution line, 30 to 40 feet tall, much smaller poles that you'll see go into residence, go to your house, those type of poles. But there is infrastructure there, and that is a consideration as well as a roadway where frequently you do tend to try to parallel that type of right-of-way.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
The distribution lines will stay in place, right?
Correct. We're gonna they will stay in place. We're actually going to build them onto the transmission line, so we're going to remove the distribution poles and put the distribution line on the transmission poles.
So there'd only be one pole for both purposes.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We have several people that have signed up on our hearing sheet, so we will open the public hearing. And I will read the names if they have signed in. And if you wish to speak, you may come forward and state your name and address. And we ask that if you do speak, you limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. The first name is Carol Cunningham.
I'm at 6081 South County Road 129, also known as Brick Center. I need to know, how is this going to affect our groundwater that we have now, our wells, because they are going to be drilling down, and how many lines are they proposing to put up?
Okay. Those are your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will go through all of the public comment, and then we'll have the applicant come back and answer those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second name is Dave Wasson.
Hi, I'm Dave Wilson. I live at 6751 South County Road 129, also known as Brick Center. As far as where the lines are running now, we live on the west side of the road, and that's where our transmission line obviously comes from, or our line to our house. And I'm confused on if they're going to replace that pole where it is or if it's going on the other side of the street. And if they do that, if they're going to run the line over the road or under the road to feed our house. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the third name is Marley Wilson.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, very good. Ricky Mitchell. I guess he's not here. Mike Evans. And the last name is Raul Bruback from Wheeler Court. I have trouble reading the writing. Is he here and wishes to speak? Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jim Campbell. I'm with the law firm of Campbell, Killen, Britton, and Ray, and I am, in fact, attached to the letter. I apologize, I didn't see the sign-up sheet. My client is Friend Investments in Running Creek Ranch. They're the largest landowner in the affected property in Arapahoe County. They're 5 miles of the total length of this power line and 3 miles in Arapahoe County. So they're the largest burden landowner for this thing. We have multiple concerns with this that we'd like to run through, and they are spelled out in my letter, but I'll try and be brief. In my letter, I mentioned the health concerns. Obviously, there's been studies long ago and currently that state that these things are not healthy to humans, animals, or anybody residing nearby, and there's just as many studies that show that there's no health effects. I think Mr. Murphy will get up here and he'll say there are no effects to being exposed to EMF, including a study by the National Institute of Cancer. He's dead right. There is a ton of debate on this issue. What there is no debate on is that the public perception of these things is bad. And the fact is that if they were as healthy as IRE says they were and the public thought that, you wouldn't have setback requirements like you do. So when you put a 75-foot easement through someone's property to put these things up, the fact of the matter is you render the residual of that property virtually undevelopable. Now, IRE claims these are easements and not a taking, but the fact of the matter is once you put these poles up, they're not coming down. And so my client's going to suffer a serious loss as to the residual loss of value to his property. Now, one of the issues we had in Elbert County was, as I stated in my letter, we did not get the offer stating what they proposed the value was to each of the 5 parcels my client owns until the day before the county hearing. We knew about this project. My client did not attend the sessions, doesn't recall getting notice, but I'm not saying he didn't. He may well have and didn't go. But the fact of the matter is the rubber meets the road when you get an offer for an easement, and we didn't get that till the day before the hearing. Now, in looking at the offers, we're going to have to conduct a pretty substantial analysis to decide not only what the fee value is, but what is the loss of development value to my client. That's going to result in experts and appraisals and the like, and we certainly didn't have time to do that one day before the Board of County Commissioners hearing in Elbert County. In fact, the board continued. They did not approve the application. They continued it to May 9th in an effort that hopefully we could get together and come up with a resolution to the compensation for this. I don't know that we will. I would doubt that we will because I think it's going to take a substantial amount of time. And to one of the commissioners' point, I don't think they've procured any easements. And in the timeline Mr. Murphy put up, he put the land acquisition starting in 2017. I don't think the land acquisition process started until April 10th when we got our offer. We've been discussing routes. We've been discussing what this looked like. But again, we don't know what our future losses until we get an offer from them. So at a minimum, the burden to my client, one of the requirements in the general criteria of approval is that there be no undue hardship or burden to any residents. Well, I think my client is going to experience a pretty significant hardship and burden. For that reason alone, I think the application should be denied or at least be conditioned. Secondly, I don't think that if you approve the application right now, that helps our position in any negotiation. We're not with IRA. In fact, the Elbert County Commission was concerned that if they approved an application before any discussions had taken place, that they would shift the balance of leverage in the negotiations. I agree with them. You're sitting there with an approved application. You lose a little bit of negotiation leverage at the table. So at a minimum, I would ask that you delay this until we have enough time and the other landowners have enough time. I mean, the landowners are talking. My client happens to be the biggest one as to what this negotiation process looked like. Let it play out for a while, and then they could come back to you and sort of do what Elbert County did and say, go get the land acquisition process further down the line and then come back to us. So, again, thank you very much for your consideration if you have any questions.
Any questions?
I have a question. So is your client then, is he opposed to this line, or is he just looking for better clarity on compensation?
Well, ultimately he's opposed to the line, understanding that IRA has condemning authority. It's tough to fight the government sometimes. So if the government comes in and condemns, or a governmental authority, if they condemn, then our issue is what the compensation be. We don't want the power lines there. But if they're going to insist on this route, then we would like to be fairly compensated. To Commissioner Miller's point, I think IRA did approach Elbert County on 2 occasions to expand the facilities of Kiowa Bennett Road and to get a waiver because the easement requirement is less than the requirement for this voltage. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're up here, I think it's 35 for the lines that are going up Kiowa Bennett, and this type of line increases to 75 feet, so they were unable to get the waiver. But again, our position is that to the extent you can use existing facilities and existing right-of-way with at least pretty close to similar lines, you ought to do it rather than building an entirely new facility and exposing new landowners to whatever the effects are and also the loss of value.
One more question.
Yep.
What's the current use of your client's?
It's agricultural.
Thank you.
Mr. Chapman.
So you sent us an article here on childhood cancer in England and Wales on a study that was done between 1962 and 1995.
No, that study's from 2005, the one I sent you.
Well, there was no date on it at all, and you didn't have any sort of U.S. study?
Well, there's studies all over the world, and they go on both sides of the aisle. This is just an example that this issue
People exposed during 1962 to 95.
The first study actually started here in Colorado in '79, and you have studies. Your study's as good as you want it to be.
I just, as a comment, would like something. If you ever get into this again, something a little more current.
Yep. Thank you.
And something in the United States.
Yep. Thank you.
How much time do you think you need to get further down this negotiating road? I mean, are you talking 30 days or a year?
Well, I don't think it's 30 days, and I don't think it's a year. We're actually meeting, my client with me today representing Friend is Joseph Friend and Phil Passione, and we're actually meeting with potential experts tomorrow to see what their thoughts are. Obviously, we're going to need some help to decide what the fair compensation should be. So I don't know that we get this done in 30 days. I certainly don't think it takes a year. So 60 to 90, but we certainly need to get in and it's the reason we waited till now is it's an expensive process to go and conduct this evaluation. So we certainly wanted to wait and see what the offer looked like if the application was in fact going to get approved, and it came when it did.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
There's nobody else on that has signed up. Anybody else wish to come forward? We need to get the questions answered from the people that did speak? From the applicant? Please come here.
I tried to take good notes here, but correct me if I'm wrong with some of my notes and assumptions. So I think, Carol, you'd asked about how many lines?
Yeah, how many lines do you propose?
So we've got a single line.
Can you please speak forward to
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So it's a single line, but the line itself is made up of 3 wires. To be, if that maybe helps clarify, but they'll all be on a single pole, and those pictures showed pretty much what you've got. You'll have a what we call a shield line, fiber line actually in this case. So we'll have fiber on the top of the pole, and then 3 separate conductors or wires on each pole. But that makes up a single line in the industry, or single circuit in the industry. And then ground wells, I do not believe we will have any impact at all. The foundations we're talking about on the wood poles would be anywhere from 12 to 16 feet deep, and the concrete foundations would be about 20 feet. So I don't foresee that impacting any groundwater in the area.
Are you required to evaluate groundwater issues under the regulations as they exist now?
Not that I'm aware of. And maybe Bill might have some information, or maybe anyone on our team might have some information on that. I don't believe so.
You're not boring. So
So from a structural standpoint, which is going to be, I think, different from the question on groundwater, we want to be aware of where the water table is just from our foundation design standpoint. But from a impact to well water, I don't see how it could have any effect, even if it reached into there. It's not going to reach in that deep. Okay, so, and then the second question, and I apologize, I didn't catch the name. Dave, sorry, was if we're going to replace the distribution. So, right, and I was having trouble following it, and we probably have to sit down and just look at a map together to go through it and make sure. So there's existing distribution on the east side of Brick Center for a portion of Brick Center Road. We intend to put that distribution on our new transmission poles. Anything on the west side that is existing will remain as it is. So if there's any crossover to the distribution, and maybe that's the question, we will have to refeed that, but we're not expecting to refeed any residences. We are not impacting any feeds directly to houses. The third list of questions relates to Friend. He's correct. I've read several health studies on EMF, generally the consensus, and there's data to back this up, and we're welcome to send it over to you if you'd like. You get more EMF exposure in your house on a daily basis than you would from any transmission line, especially at 115 kV. And there isn't any validation in my mind to the negative effects to it. I've read through this to some degree as best I could today. I think it's just as likely as chance, and that I think it's even stated in the report provided. There's no accepted biological mechanism to explain the, I'm going to butcher that word, epidemiology results.
Epidemiology.
Thank you.
Close.
Indeed, the relation may be due to chance or confounding, is one of their statements in the conclusions. As far as, so from a health standpoint, I wouldn't agree that the setbacks that he referenced are related to health. I mean, the county is creating the setbacks. I might defer that back to the county. Are the setbacks because of health reasons for transmission lines? I don't know, Bill, if you could answer that specific, but our understanding is the setbacks have nothing to do with health concerns.
So, without being able to speak directly to it, I can speak directly opposite. I've been told that the county does not acknowledge any pro or con to the health issues. We are neither informed nor specialized enough to make that determination on our own. So those setbacks wouldn't be based on health considerations. They may be based on what happens if a pole falls over, maybe based on width needed to install. And my worthy mentor, Sherman Fair, who's been a senior planner at the county longer than I have and has done more than I have of these cases, says it's the Public Utilities Commission that sets those setback widths. Thank you, Sherman.
And as well, it's not due to health reasons, as I understand it. To continue addressing the questions, the land acquisition process, it did start in 2017. There's many steps that we go through. IREA did not just off the cuff throw out a number for the value of an easement. We have to start the process with understanding what is actually being acquired as part of the easement. That goes to what are the right-of-way boundaries that influences how much of an easement you're getting. So you have to actually get a land survey completed to define that. That you then have to go through a certified appraisal, IRA, to get an appraisal for all the land that the line is crossing, evaluate that internally, talk back and forth, and then ultimately send out an offer and start discussions with landowners about that offer. So it did start in earnest in 2017. It's not a quick process to nail that down for us. The other comment on Kiowa Bennett Road, I think there was reference to Elbert County and why not put it on Kiowa Bennett Road. It wasn't due to health issues. It wasn't due to easement issues. It wasn't put on Kiowa Bennett Road due to a regulation in Elbert County about being a quarter mile away from a subdivision, which on Kiowa Bennett Road there is. So we weren't allowed to put the line there. In fact, I already did try in years past to have a line route going on Kiowa Bennett Road, and it was denied twice in Elbert County. So we did not feel it prudent to try to do that for a third time. Beyond that, I think in good faith, IRA is attempting to negotiate this easement, has in good faith attempted to contact all landowners and invite them to ask questions, gain information, start discussions, and I believe we're meeting all the requirements of the county at this point.
I have one more question. You probably won't remember this off the top of your head, but the other routes that were considered, do you remember how many landowners were along those routes?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know that this route has 6 specific landowners on it. And Stacy or Vanessa, do you? And apologies, that's true. It is in the application. We did provide the criteria table and specifically identified parcels crossed, which was a consideration. Obviously, we try to limit the amount of parcels that we cross, the amount of landowners we affected, and I'm pretty sure that this has the least amount of impact from that standpoint. But thank you, it is in the report, page 115.
Yeah, I know. It was
right?
something I didn't quite get to.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Anybody else wish to come and speak? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to planning for consideration. And I guess we have to take these separately. Do the 1041 first, is that correct? If anybody is comfortable enough to make a motion, or whether we think we need more time.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Mrs. Larson.
In the case, let's see, what is this? ASI 17-001, IREA electrical reliability upgrade 1041 permit. I've reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment as presented at the hearing, and hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions 1 through 4 stated in the report.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Mrs. Chaffin seconds the motion. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will now consider the location and extent of L&E of the same project.
May I interject? I noticed that Microsoft Word sees control of those conditions, and they are numbered 5 through 8. They are 1 through 4 in the location and extent.
Do we need a separate motion for the location and extent?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Chaffin, thank you.
Yes, in the case of L17-011, IREA electrical reliability upgrade location and extent plan, I've reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment as presented at the hearing, and hereby move to approve this application based on the findings from the staff report, subject to the following 4 conditions in the staff report.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I will second.
Okay, Jamie Woolman seconds the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed?
Opposed.
1 opposition. Mr. Miller. Okay. I believe that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. Unless there are further announcements, cases, we are adjourned.
What?
Okay. To the recycle. Jane, thank you.
No, thank you. You're just...
Yeah.